Dacer's letter to President Estrada dated October 8, 1999, he said in unequivocal terms that he is opposed to the appointment of General Lacson as Chief of the Philippine National Police. The pertinent portion of Mr. Dacer's letter expressed concern on General Lacson's appointment as Chief of PNP, which I now quote. I too have direct experience with General Lacson's willingness to use any means, including foul, to advance his interests. I set great faith in Your Excellency's wisdom and ability to defeat threats against our civil society. But I too realize that having to control the potential damage General Lacson is capable of sowing could divert much needed attention from other pressing matters of the state. Alang-alang po sa iyong kabutihan, Mr. President, at sa kabutihan ng buong sambayanan, I vehemently oppose General Lacson for the Chief PNP post. End of quote. Mr. President, it is also important to cite here the testimony of Ms. Sabina Dacer Reyes, the daughter of Mr. Bubi Dacer, who said in the hearing of July 11, 2008, of the case of People of the Philippines versus Police Superintendent Michael Ray Aquino et al. On page 57 of the transcript, Ms. Dacer Reyes said, responding to a question from the court, that, and I quote, I remembered, as I said, I had flashbacks in my mind, and I was scared and remembered in 2 or more of our Sunday brunches with my dad in his house. He would tell us, if anything happens to me, mga anak, walang ibang may kagagawan yan kung hindi si Ping Lacson. Mr. President, all these point the motive that Mr. Lacson had to eliminate Mr. Bubi Dacer. And for all intents and purposes, he had the resources, he had the instruments, and the capability to do this deed. All these, Mr. President, indicate the culpability of Senator Lacson, which he now desperately wants to extricate himself from by implicating President Estrada to draw attention away from him. Mr. President, in Mr. Lacson's own words, he said that he was supporting the families of his former subordinates. Sige, Ginoong Lacson ang nagsabi na tuloy-tuloy daw ang pagtulong niya hanggang pinauwi sa Pilipinas si Ginoong Cesar Mancao at si Ginoong Glenn Dumlao. Ginoong Pangulo, sino ba ang nagpapunta sa ibang bansa kay Michael Ray Aquino, kay Cesar Mancao at Glenn Dumlao? Umalis sila ng Pilipinas na hindi nagpapaalam dahil sila ay sinabihan ni Ginoong Lacson na umalis na lamang sa Pilipinas. Mr. Lacson was the one who asked his subordinates to flee and did not inform President Estrada that they were leaving the country. Mr. Lacson was the only one who knew that they left for abroad because Mr. Lacson asked them to. Perhaps he did not just ask them to go. He ordered them to leave. Kaya natural lamang na hindi sila mabigyan ng tulong o kanang kahit 5 duling ng Pangulong Estrada dahil hindi niya alam na umalis sila ng bansa. Kaya kung totoong may kinalaman ng Pangulong Estrada sa mga kasalanang ibinibintang laban sa kanila, hindi ba natural lamang na suportahan din sila sa kanilang pag-alis at bigyan sila ng hindi lamang 5 duling, kung hindi libu-libong banlag? Mr. President, why did Mr. Lacson take this alternative instead of letting them stay here and answer the charges against them. Mr. President, when President Estrada was unconstitutionally removed as president, he chose to stay in the Philippines to answer the charges against him. Why did Mr. Lacson ask his 3 subordinates instead to leave the country? Is it because he knew that he would be implicated? Mr. President, Mr. Lacson also cites what he calls the curious case of Mr. Edgar Bentain. He says in his privileged speech that sometime in the middle of January 1999, Mr. Bentain was abducted in Rojas Boulevard and killed somewhere in Laguna. Ginoong Pangulo, paano nalaman ni Ginoong Lacson na si Mr. Bentain ay dinampot sa Rojas Boulevard? At paano din nalaman ni Ginoong Lacson na si Ginoong Bentain ay pinatay sa Laguna? Mr. President, up to now, the remains of Mr. Bentain, if he indeed was killed, has not yet been found. And yesterday, Mr. Lacson categorically made the positive declaration that Mr. Bentain was abducted somewhere in Ross Boulevard and killed somewhere in Laguna. Before Mr. Lacson delivered his speech, Mr. Bentain is listed officially as a missing person. It was only after Senator Lacson's speech that the whole nation came to know that Mr. Bentain was abducted somewhere in Rojas Boulevard and killed somewhere in Laguna. In that same speech, Mr. Lacson likewise stated a police officer still active at that time allegedly went and reported to Polk Street in Green Hills that the mission had been accomplished. Alam pala ni Ginoong Lacson kung sino ang may kinalaman sa sinasabi niyang pagdukot at pagpaslang kay Ginoong Bentain. At kung totoo, yan ay kilala niya ang police officer na ito. At kung totoo, yan ay kilala niya ang police officer na ito. Ano po ang ginawa niya? In his speech, Mr. Lacson said that he had been a law enforcer who upheld the law and fulfilled his oath. Why did he not take action against